I have a sponsor. The sponsor is a sponsor. I feel like that's important to say because there was a time, long stretch of my sobriety where I had a hard time connecting with women and I would not have a sponsor. And I wouldn't recommend that. I really wouldn't recommend that. So I'm proud to have one today. I was thinking about what I was going to share. I don't love to stay too much in the experience. I drank all the drinks I needed to drink to get in here. I tried to figure out how not to come. I have an aunt who has been sober 48 years, something like that. Is that right? And when I was really in the thick of my drinking, I lived near her, and she's very bossy. And she would take, which is separate from being an alcoholic, sort of. But anyway, so she would take me to meetings with her, and I didn't realize that she was trying to 12-step me. I thought that I was hiding my alcoholism really well. I was a supreme people pleaser. So I was like, if I show up hungover and I still do everything, like, it's okay, whatever. And so I just never pieced it together that she was trying to help me. And because she's very strong in her personality, I don't know that I wanted what she had. Now I do for sure. But at that time, it was difficult for me to imagine giving up booze, which really was my only coping mechanism for my life, and then trading that to be nuts. I was like, oh God, I'm not doing it. It turns out I did do that for a little bit, but anyway, when I thought I had a conscious decision for it, I was like, So anyway, I started drinking at the age of 14, which I feel like is a very common age that I hear in these halls, which is interesting to me. And I got sober at 30. I was a blackout drinker from the start. I don't understand when people say that they don't want to black out. I loved it. I thought it was great. It helped me, it just shut off my brain for a few hours and let me just relax. I didn't know how to relax. I didn't know how to be myself. I didn't know how to be in my own skin. I now realize that booze was not my first addiction. Food was, and then being a workaholic. So I'm also in those fellowships. I just say that because a lot of people don't know Workaholics Anonymous exists, which is also like activity addiction. You don't have to have a job to be a member. I was probably in those addictions earlier than I started drinking. I remember as a kid, I was an only child, and we had a typewriter in our basement, and I would go play Office by myself, and I would get high on typing. So anyway, I earned that fellowship big time. But alcohol was the one that worked the best. It just shut my brain off. And I had a sponsee who has now passed away from the disease, unfortunately. And she would say, and pardon this row, who's heard this a bunch, but she would say, alcohol made me wittier, tittier, and prettier. I don't know what the male equivalent is, but the only think of what that is. But that's what it did for me. It really just made me feel like, oh my gosh, I'm finally here. I can let a lot of this go. I let my brain go. It's disconnecting. My anxiety is, mellowing out. So I loved it. I rode it like a lazy river for a while. And I knew that I had a problem with alcohol probably halfway in my drinking. I knew I didn't drink normally. I didn't want to drink normally. I didn't understand what that meant. I remember I had a boyfriend and he said, oh, and if my head starts to get a little light, I stop. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like that was where I just let it go. Let's keep going. So I loved it. But I did, like I said, I didn't know that I had a problem with it. And it wasn't until I got in here, because I was trying all the, I think it's page 32 where we talk about like, trading all the different types of alcohol, taking a drink or taking a trip, not taking a trip, like all the ways that we would kind of modify our behavior in our lives and our drinking to try to make alcohol work. Man, I had that down to a science. I was trying everything. Oh, gin makes me crazy. I better try vodka. Oh man, okay, whiskey, and nothing worked. I wasn't able to figure it out, but I kept putting that lab coat on every time, just thinking this time's going to be different. This time's going to be different. And I also did controlled drinking, which I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I really wouldn't. It was absolutely miserable. I didn't know that's what it was called until I came in and I read about it in the book. But I would take I'd say, okay, I'm going to go to this party. I'm going to have 2 drinks. And my problem is that I drink like such a pig. I'd have the 2 drinks like 15 minutes after showing up. And then I'd watch everybody. Again, in the book, it talks about drinking with impunity. you can drink 3 drinks, 4 drinks, and you don't get in trouble, whatever, you know. And I get so distracted watching people drink that I would not be able to carry on a conversation anymore, you know. And I don't think people who don't have an alcohol problem, I don't think they sit around wondering if they have an alcohol problem. So, you know, I was like, this isn't good. And because I loved blacking out, the longer, as I got later into my drinking, I couldn't control. So in addition, while I was trying to like balance the number of drinks and what I was drinking, I couldn't control when I would black out anymore. Sometimes it would be 2 drinks. Sometimes it would be 20. It took me a lot to get my brain to shut off. And it was miserable. It was absolutely miserable because I just did not want to give up my whoopee. I did not want to give up my best friend. I did not want to give up the pressure release. I just thought, you know, if I just try hard enough, again, workaholism, but if I just try hard enough, I'm going to be able to drink normally. And it just never happened. You know, it just never happened. It broke my heart. It broke my heart. But I realized that this was my higher power looking out for me all along. The other thing I realized recently was that I should have said in that time, like when people ask me what my hobbies were at that time, I would say like reading and writing, you know, going to movies. But I should have just said drunk driving in a blackout because that's what I did. That's what I did every day. I did that. And so it's like, be honest about where you're at. Anyway, I drank with some people in this room and I got sober with a person in this room. They may not have realized it, but I realize now that like how I'm going to now transition to talking more about my higher power because I've just really come into close connection with my higher power the longer that I stay sober. And I had a revelation recently about how my brain naturally works and how much I need a connection with my higher power to stay sane and sober. So anyway, my higher power is a fantastic sense of humor, fantastic. And it's annoying. I'll say that. So, you know, I got sober the day after. We actually had a St. Patty's Day party at a friend's graduation. And I had a drink in my hand. And like I said, I've been trying for 6 years to stop or to balance. And, you know, I mean, honestly, if I had spent anything else in my life, the amount of effort that I took to stop to drink normally, I would be a billionaire. I really would, because I was just tenacious about trying to find a way to make it work. So we were at a St. Patty's graduation party and I had a drink in my hand and I said something, I don't even remember what it was, but the brother of one of the people that we were there with said, "Oh, here she goes again." And I don't know even what that meant because this blackout drunk wouldn't know what I was doing. But I remember looking down at the pint glass and thinking, I never have to have a drink again. And I haven't since that point. I didn't realize how lucky I was to be given that gift. That was my higher power definitely taking care of me. But I set that down. And I count the day after as the day I got sober because I definitely had a lot of booze in my system. I probably still did when I woke up the next day, but that's my day. And my higher power is a great sense of humor because it's the day after St. Patty's Day. And so everyone's like, "Oh, I had a bad St. Patty's Day." I'm like, "Have you met an alcoholic? Like that is amateur night to the nth degree. What are you talking about?" No, you know, but it's a good ego busting thing for me that I get to talk about that because I want to be like, well, I was legit alcoholic, you know. I probably did have a bad night that night, but anyway. So I had also gotten a DUI. I got sober here in Seattle and I got my DUI in Seattle. And I guess they bumped it down to a reckless driving ultimately because of how long it takes our system at that time to, you know, move everybody through. But anyway, I just remember thinking like, shit, now that I'm in trouble with the law, people are going to know that I have a problem with alcohol. And I don't want to drink anymore. That desire to drink being removed, that pint glass being moved out of my hand. I was like, I'm going to try this on my own. I'm not going to go to AA. And I lasted about a month without going to meetings. And I was so nuts, just fucking nuts. And my anxiety was so bad. And I realized, you know, at that time I had a corporate job, I had a mortgage, I had whatever. And I couldn't live my life. I didn't know how to live my life. And so I got sober at the 12 and 12 in Bothell. It was in the country village. They've moved it now, but it was there. And again, my higher power is a great sense of humor because when I was a kid, I used to sing at Christmas carols and stuff with a choir I was in at Country Village. And so I drove in there. I was like, this can't be good. Dad, what are we talking about? And, it's 8 o'clock at night. I drive all the way to the back if anybody had been there before. It was in an upstairs building. And God never made a longer staircase than that one, I'll tell you what. But I drove up and there were all these people out there smoking and they were kids. And I was like, is there like a church group around here? I mean, that's how screwed up I was. And I was like, a group of kids out smoking must be a church group. No, anyway. So I went up there and walked. It took me a minute to really like, okay, my life is going to change after this. Somehow I knew that it felt different. I think because, again, my ego was smashed and saying, I can't do this on my own. I need to come in and figure out what's here for me. And if it doesn't work, I don't know what I thought I was going to do, but if it doesn't work, I'll do something else. And so I walked up those stairs, walked in the room, and a guy that I had drank with in high school was chairing the meeting. And he made a beeline for me and said, do I owe you an amends? And I was like, I don't know what that means. I don't think so. I don't know. So it was great, though, because I am still a misanthrope. I don't love people. I work in a very people-oriented profession, which is kind of funny. And I am enthusiastic and I am, whatever I try. I do love people, but I can't stand them at the same time. And so when I showed up in that room, I sat in the back. I have RBF naturally, so everybody kind of stayed away from me, And so him being there was great because, again, it was a gift from my higher power because I was like, I know Greg. I can back to Greg. I can be there with Greg. And it turns out that Greg didn't live anywhere close to that meeting. He was giving that group an amends because he had bailed out on a service commitment. So he was running the meeting on that night for, a month or something to make up for it. So the chances, right? Of course, that's how higher power works. But that got me going there. And it got me at least, in a rhythm of being in a place that I felt less uncomfortable. I won't say comfortable, but less uncomfortable. And I just stayed there. I just stayed. People were laughing. I didn't know what was so fucking funny. I felt like shit. I did not think I was going to be able to laugh my way out of this. I did not I wasn't going to be able to fake you guys out and thinking that I was doing okay. I just sat in the back and did not feel great. But I am ham. And so when they would ask people to share and stuff, I was like, oh, this is great. So that also was a good thing to stay. And I got a service position there and I stayed, led that meeting on Saturday mornings for 5 years and really service kept me sober there. It was great. It was really wonderful. I can't remember what else I was going to say about that place, except that, I'm glad it is still around and has moved to a location that is above the Baskin & Robbins, so it makes it even better. Anyway, so I just, at that time, I was not a higher power connected person at all. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I liked. When I came in and you all would say we're a bunch of liars, cheats, and thieves, I was like, that's not me. I don't do that. You guys may do that. I don't do that. And then the longer that I stayed and listened, and it was like, well, when you go to work hungover, that's like stealing time from your employer. You realize that, right? And when your yeses don't mean yes and your no's don't mean no, and you're showing up out of duress and you're just not showing up and you're ghosting people, that's also stealing people's sanity. That's stealing respect. That's stealing, it's just don't do it. And so I really had a hard time understanding the things that I was doing in the world. I thought that I was a good person, and I was fine, but I thought that I was a better person than I actually was. Still think because I was very self-centered, and very scared, full of fear, still full of fear. And I didn't know how to. They make this joke when Woody Allen was less problematic, but inside, I feel like I have a T-Rex and Woody Allen is riding it around. That's what it feels like. That's just like me, naturally, without a lot of help. So anyway, I had this real realization about who I was. And Sean mentioned Italy. I went to Italy when I was 9 months sober, and I went with two women who were drinking. I don't think they have a problem with booze. I don't know. And I remember just being so upset, and I hadn't taken care of myself and doing the research to find out where the English speaking meetings were in Rome. And I'm positive there were probably 10 million of them, but God, I was not going to ask for help. So I just white knuckled it. I just went and got more and more resentful as they would have their 1 and 2 glasses of wine. And I remember waking up before them at like 5 in the morning, and we were staying out near the Vatican, and the bells were going to, call people into early morning mass. And I was so mad at myself that I was there and I couldn't be present and I couldn't enjoy my time. And I was just so fucking mad that they could drink and I could not. And so I just cried out to a higher power that I don't know that I necessarily believed in at that time and said, why can't I just be normal? Why can't I just be here? Why can't I just be comfortable in my own skin? And I heard a voice that said, I don't make junk. And that was it. Like, okay. Now I believe in a higher power. Like, it scared me. It scared me, but it just switched my heart. In the same way that my higher power had switched my heart with that plant. It just turned me. And I was like, now I need to work on developing a relationship with this disembodied voice that just guided me in the right direction. It doesn't mean that everything got better. I still Heisman my higher power a lot of the time, but it was a real relief to understand that I'm a burning bush alcoholic. I have to have things like proven to me and then I walk towards it. I have a hard time just kind of taking things on faith. It has gotten better the longer that I've stayed sober, but it's a struggle still. It's a struggle still. I have to catch myself sometimes of like, do you really need proof or are you just being an asshole? Like, come on, let's do it. Let's give it a try. But because I didn't know who I was, all of it was new. And I think of, who I thought I was and who I actually am. And the steps help bring those two closer together, and some days are still like the Michael Jordan poster when I was young, all the way at Wings or whatever, all the way across. Sometimes it's like that. Some days it's, like that. But it keeps me coming back to the program and refreshed in this because I feel like I'm a new person at every phase of my life. I'm asked to do new things. I'm asked to show up in new ways. So I ended up moving to Boston and living there for 11 years. I wouldn't recommend it except because I didn't like that city, but I ended up meeting my husband there in a meeting. And I met him because they didn't ever read how it works in the start of meetings. They just don't do that there. And I was like, how do you know how it works if you don't read how it works? What the fuck are we doing? And so we had a lull in a meeting and I said, well, maybe we could read how it works. And this guy said, oh, you're sick of it. You Seattle people are sick of it. And I was like, maybe, yeah. But that got him to turn around and see me. And it's been magic ever since. It's been great. I didn't make that up. It really has. It's wonderful to have somebody who's in the program because in our house, we can say, what step are you working right now? Like, tell me what step. And usually it's a 10 step. Like, I'm about to apologize to you for my behavior. But I appreciate that I have become a woman of worth. I've become a woman of worth and I attract people of worth. And I have sustained friendships with people, as I said, people in this room I drank with and are now sober. What a beautiful thing. And family members are now sober, and so my life is just so beautiful in so many ways because I learned how to be a human being here and respect myself and treat others with respect. And that's a huge, huge gift. And I know I would have been able to fake it, as a good actress. That's part of the line. Like I could just, be very mutable and do what you needed me to do to charm you. But I didn't know how to actually connect with people and how to actually feel. And it's been a little bit of a painful process. I know we say like not humiliation, but humility. There is some humiliation in this process for me to understand like how I actually behave and how feral I can be, and how much I have to work, put a lot of effort into practicing these principles in all of my affairs and trying to actually be a good human, I have stopped when my husband, so far, when my husband is driving, I really try hard, and I haven't in a while leaned over and honked the horn. It's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard because I'm not patient, I'm not, I just have a difficult time. So the thing that was a revelation that I had recently, I'm working the steps in another fellowship, and they do a very detailed list of questions for each of the emotions. They don't let you off to make your own list like you do in AA. It's like, oh, no, we're going to ask you all the shitty questions that you need to answer. And the top of the fear section, the first question was related to like, how much do I worry about the future? Do I live my life with anxiety? It was something like that. I'm paraphrasing. And I was like, yeah. I mean, like, is 100% an answer about worrying? And the revelation for me was connecting that with the header of fear. I would not have described myself as a fearful person, not since getting sober. I, used to do a lot of really stupid stuff in a blackout that was scary, but I do feel now I can trust myself. I can do things, when I'm called to show up in a way that where I need to show up. Like my stepdaughter, when she was young, we put her into a mental hospital twice, and I showed up, and when we took her to the ER and she asked me to ride in the ambulance with her and not her two parents who were there, I showed up. I did not want to do that. I was so freaked out by that. And I was freaked out about how they were going to feel about me doing that. And I was like, this is greater. This is not about any part of me in this whole thing. Just get in the fucking ambulance and go. I can take on different things at work and think about how to be a reasonable person and a good boss to people and not take people hostage. I do it on the road, but I try not to do it at work. And it just is it's a really important thing, but I didn't connect that I still live with a lot of fear. I still live with a lot of what if. I've heard in meetings a bunch of times what people think about me is none of my business. I'm like, oh my God, that is so powerful. How? Yeah. How? How does one not care what people think about you? What wizardry is that, And I worry a lot about, it's the stuff, again, that I heard in here. Fear is not getting something I want or having something I have now being taken away from me. Those are like the two drivers of fear. And so I recognize that because I've been in here, because I've worked the steps, because I've listened to all of you, that the fastest way to get out of fear is to move into faith and to have that connection with a higher power and to feel like I'm being taken care of. And there are so many moments in my life that I could share with you all. You'd be so bored, where I could say, this is where my higher power took care of me. And things that, big things, little things, all the stuff. So I know it happens. I know it happens. But there's a part of me that's still very much like, God, I will let you take all the big stuff. Like when my stepfather, who I'm very close with, when he died of cancer, and I was there for the last 10 days of his life. And on day 10, I was like, I am fucking not okay with him dying. But I'm going to go get the hospital bed, and I'm going to go set up the room, and I'm going to do all the things so that he can come home and he can die in the house. I'm going to do that for my mother, and I'm going to do that for him. And I'm going to stay at the house, over those 10 days. And he lost consciousness, and he was in pain. And by day 1, and then day 0, when he actually died, I was ready for him to die because I was there, and I didn't leave. And I watched my stepmother drink through the whole thing. And I thought, don't do it. You're going to miss the best parts. Don't do it. So I didn't do that. But there's times when I go to work in the morning and I'm like, who's going to hate me today? What meeting am I going to screw up today? How am I going to say something that isn't good? I went to an exercise class this morning, and again, humility, not humiliation, but I go and everybody else is 5 years old in that room, and I'm like wobbling on the Pilates machine, and I'm like, okay, just do your best. Just do your best, That's all I can do. I'm going to show up for myself, even though I don't feel like I belong. Like I paid to be here. Like someone wants me here. The woman who owns the building wants me here. So, okay. But, I still I feel like this big. And so when I hear people talk about they like themselves, they don't want to kill themselves anymore, that is such a powerful promise. It's so amazing. It's wonderful. And so I realize because I have been disconnected from my higher power on the real fundamental things, which is how I think in any given moment. That's what I need my higher powers help. So I've really tried to show up differently for myself since having that discussion with my sponsor and answering that question in the steps. I was like, oh my God, I am so full of fear, and I wouldn't have described myself as a fearful person, like I said. So it's just surprising to me. And I'm so glad, I'm so grateful for this program that you guys all knew this shit already, but like the answer's already here. Like it talks about it on the wall, right? That like we have a connection with our higher power to help us in everything. So I knew what to do. I knew where to come. I knew who to talk. There was a path, I didn't have to come up with it on my own. And I'm so grateful that the program and my higher power, but the program has something for me. Like I said, at every stage of my life, this moment, I can pick up the big book and open it to any page. And I bet the sentence that I read will apply to the thing I'm thinking about right now. I have that experience, every time. And I'm telling you, I have read that book cover to cover multiple times and I forget what's in it. It's like it's being rewritten every time I open it. And I am a person who read William Faulkner. William Faulkner is one of my favorite writers, and nobody's read him. He's obnoxiously wordy and long, and I can remember, whole flows of passages, but I open up the big book and I'm like, what is this? Somebody wrote it. Oh my God. Like the plain language one really kicked my ass because I was like, oh, this is different. Wow. But I can open that and the program just rises to meet me where I'm at and gives me what I need. And I just don't have to think about how am I going to do this anymore. Just don't have to. The answer is coming to meetings, doing service, having a sponsor, and staying connected to the God. That's it. Super simple. Super simple. I don't know why I fight it so much. I really don't. It's just like such a thing where I'm like, oh, that's working. I better stop. Well, these vitamins make me feel better. I better just stop taking those. It just doesn't make any sense. But because people are laughing, I think that you all can relate to that. So it's good. Like I appreciate being in a room where I can be really honest about how I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, how I'm living my life in a meaningful way. And you all are like, great. Me too. Sometimes me too. Sometimes I was there. Sometimes like, I don't want to hear that because I don't want to go through that, but we are connected in that way that is just so powerful, so powerful. And I'll just close by saying, I wish everybody in the world could be an alcoholic. I really do. I really do. An alcoholic working on sobriety, let me say that. I should clarify. Because, and actually, right, like the step one is the only one that talks about alcohol. So I'm like, anybody could come in here and get this path for living. And we are so lucky. When the book says the chosen few, it's us. It's us. Because I think about all the people that we've meditated on, right? Who are struggling and don't want to come in or don't know about us and don't know that there is a better way to live. Even people that don't have alcoholism, there is a better way to live. And man, I don't know how I got so lucky to be in here and to know all of you to be here tonight. I really appreciate you being here and helping me. Like I honestly, I was like, okay, I'm gonna come and share. And sometimes, I'll say to my husband, I was like, he told the good joke, because like you get to know somebody's story. I'm like, oh, AA.com one. Like he has this whole thing on that, and it's so good. And I thought I can come in here and I could lie, or and tell you how great my life is and how much AA has done for me. And that's not a lie; it's true, but it's not the whole truth. It's not the whole truth, which is I have to stay a member of AA, an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous and other fellowships, or I am so fucked. So I'm grateful to be here. I shouldn't have said that's not a more positive word. You guys could, so on my own. So lucky. So with that, of course, thank you.
Okay, well, how about another hand for Nicole and Sean?